Within the Epic of Gilgamesh, though, you have a flood story. It's just one of those common legacies, just as giants are, just as pyramids are. And there's lots of hidden common legacies that are stored all around the world in all continents, probably even Antarctica once we figure out what's actually down there, but that's another rabbit hole. But within the flood story of the Epic of Gilgamesh, you have Utnapishtim, um, or Ziusudra, and there's even one other name in a different one, but people should be familiar with those ones anyways. But he and all of his family are saved. And people use that as the true flood story. It's a giant story because Utnapishtim and Ziusudra are 2/3 God and 1/3 human, and all of their family are. It's a giant survival story. Within the Epic of Gilgamesh, you have a survival on another ark, and you have a second incursion. So we don't know. I lean heavily towards second incursion, but I'm open to the other ways. Mount Hermon is it goes back to an understanding as being a sacred mountain, and this is the mountain of Baalim, right after the flood. This is the mountain where the angels swear their oath to in the book of Enoch, and Mount Hermon shows up in the Old Testament, and it's the home of King Og, right after he moves and becomes the king of the Amorites. A patriarchless nation, but he's not the patriarch of that nation. He moves in after the War of Giants, and they're kind of wiped out, and he moves over in there, and then the Ugarit is wiped out a little bit later. So you have Mount Hermon that is, rooted in the word haram, which means that curse, a solemn oath, and things like that. And so this is the mountain that I think not only do the fallen angels and the giants, not only do they usurp away as part of the covenant land that Israel is going to have to take back, but it becomes the place where I think their council of the gods are that are talked about in Psalm 82. Because as in Deuteronomy 32, you have the 70 nations that are talked about both before and after the flood. That are the same number as the sons of Jacob in Israel that are born, and the same number of patriarchs and nations, because there's 9 patriarchless nations that are listed in the table of nations in Genesis 10 and First Chronicles. And so they rule over this world as the invisible ones, and that's the location of the congregation. That is a counterfeit of God's congregation, and it's 2 different Hebrew words that are being used in Psalms 82 and in Isaiah 14, which is, again, the infamous Satan chapter. And so Mount Hermon is very, very important. And when Jesus went to Caesarea Philippi, we know by that location that he's definitely there at that time to make Peter his church, and names him as the rock that he's going to build his church on there. And he's telling the council of the gods at the bottom of the base of Mount Hermon, where the Pan Temple is, and the gateway to Hades, a cave that goes into the underworld to where the polytheist heaven is, in the same location as the abyss, where the prisoners are of the giants and the fallen angels. He's telling them, I'm building my church and your time is over, but they still don't know because they're still going to have him crucified. Even though that becomes a huge mistake. But God knew things as Alpha Omega right from the beginning. So he obviously he didn't tell him what his plan was. It's just so important to understand the visible and the invisible ones. And so and there's a lot more orders of angels than people think. So what I do is I look at sort of the hierarchies that were posed before, and I adjust them a little bit because they don't really make sense in terms of what they've done. And I'll walk through the different ones that are identified. You need both the New and the Old Testament, both the Greek and the Hebrew, to be able to come up with these. And I present three sort of streams, but there could be four if you want to put an archangel as in the four spirits or the four winds at the top of each one of them. That's the hierarchy within the Saba, within the host, right? So you'll have, let's say, I'll do it with three, but you have like the Ophanim and the Cherubim, which is part of the throne of God. They're part of one hierarchy. You have the Seraphim, which are part of a religious and a governance aspect. And then you have the archangels and a warrior class like the Dunamis with the mighties that are also another one. But you could separate possibly into four groups, with Ophanim leading a separate one as the throne angels. And then below that are, you have these creations of the rebellious angels. This is part of the hierarchy as well. So the Rephaim and the Nephilim would be right below the fallen angels in the counterfeit host of heaven, the rebellious army that is again duplicated in the same types of labels and titles. And so they're right below. And even though they were physical offspring, and they're the divine representatives with the divine right to rule, which they do by hereditary right even to this day, you have a situation when they die that their spirit doesn't go to sleep. And I have a great document on how we know demons are the disembodied spirits of the giants that I walk through it completely biblically, with the sons of God and the Sethite argument. I have documents on that if people want that, to get a hold of me as well. So these are the disembodied spirits. These are the spirits that Jesus is dealing with, which are in the New Testament, one of them being the most famous as being Legion. But you get evil spirits and you get devils, and you get there's one other one that slips my mind, but it's the devil one that you need to understand, because they're used interchangeably. And in that document, I'll show you how they're all used together in those terms. Devil goes back to Daemon, which is a evil spirit, right? And devil there is a mistranslation, because you also have Satan as being called the devil, but that's diabolos. Whenever it's used for Satan, it's a different word, and it's a lower level. And Satan as the devil is the prince of the daemons, as diabolos is defined. And so he leads not only the angels but also the demons. This is the same word, same understanding as the evil spirits in the Old Testament and the devil gods. That's used twice in the book of Psalms and Leviticus, as I recall. And it goes back to the word shade, Shades, which is an evil spirit. And shade, or Sidhea, Shay, as it would be understood, is like of the Tuatha De Danann and the spirits of them. And that these are the same types of beings as one of the offshoots, and as it shows up in the Old Testament under Rapha, connected to Rapha as Rephaim. So you have three Raphas that I'll just mention. There's a couple more, but these are the direct ones. 7495 means healing or doctor. So when you see Raphael as an angel, it would be healer of God, or God heals, as that would translate, with the El being an angel or a god. And then you have 7496 and 7497. 7497 is the word for giants. 7496 is the word for shades, demons, daemons. So these are the disembodied spirits of the Rephaim that are the devil spirits, the daemons, as they're talked about in the New Testament.